Hi everyone. So let's just wait a few seconds or a minute or so for people to join us. And I have this short presentation that I'm going to be using to review some of the trickiest concepts from microeconomics. Just give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to give some people time to join. All right, so I'm going to get started just to kind of see. So I scheduled this because I know many of you are having your mock exams. And I also know that there are some concepts from microeconomics that are very tricky. So let's get started. Tricky concepts from microeconomics. So the first tricky concept is actually when to use the word demand and when to use the word quantity demanded, and also when to use the word supply and when to use the word quantity supplied, because demand and quantity demanded are different ideas. Supply and quantity supplied are different ideas. Just remember, demand refers to the whole demand curve, while quantity demanded refers to a point on the demand curve. Supply refers to the whole supply curve, while quantity supplied refers to a point on the supply curve. This is very important to be able to distinguish. So whenever there is a change that causes a shift of an entire curve, we describe it as either an increase or a decrease in demand because the entire curve has shifted. Or if it's supply, then you say the word supply, increase or decrease in supply. But whenever there's a movement along the curve, so say, for example, there's a rise in price, which caused a movement along the demand curve, then here we say this rise in price will cause a decrease in quantity demanded because it's a movement along the demand curve. Also, a rise in price will cause an increase in quantity supplied, a movement along the supply curve. Okay? Now, the things that shift demand or supply are the non-price determinants of demand or supply. But a change in price will always cause a movement along. So whenever price changes, then that causes a change in quantity demanded and or quantity supplied. But the non-price determinants are the ones that shift the curves. So here, for example, you have the price of holidays on the y-axis and the quantity of holidays. It seems that there's a shift of the demand curve. So here, I describe this as an increase in demand, all right? Because the whole curve has shifted to the right. Now, this increase in demand has created a situation of excess demand, another word for a shortage. This shortage will exert an upward pressure on the price, and so price will rise from PE to PE1. This rise in price will then cause a movement along the supply curve from this point here to this point there. There you go. And a movement along the new demand curve over here until a new equilibrium is reached. So this excess demand will cause the price to rise. So price rises. Therefore, quantity demanded decreases and quantity supplied increases until a new equilibrium is reached, which is PE1 and QE1. So you'll notice here, first there's an increase in demand. This increase in demand caused the price to rise. This rise in price then caused the decrease in quantity demanded along the new demand curve and an increase in quantity supplied along the supply curve until a new equilibrium is reached. You cannot say there was an increase in supply because the supply curve has not shifted. Okay, you can say that this rise in price then caused an increase in quantity supplied because there was a movement along the supply curve. So this is the first tricky concept I wanted to talk about. All right, price mechanism, the signaling and incentive functions. Okay, I wanted to talk about these. So the price mechanism has several functions in the syllabus: the signaling function, the incentive function, as well as the rationing function. These are the three functions. When demand increases, as you can see here, from D to D1, this will create a situation of excess demand, which starts to exert an upward pressure on price. So price starts to rise, okay? When price rises, this signals to producers that there's a shortage and gives them an incentive to produce more. But it also signals to consumers that there's a shortage, and the rise in price will incentivize, give consumers an incentive to consume less. So producers produce more, Consumers consume less until a new equilibrium is reached. And this is how the rise in price will basically ration or reallocate resources and then ration whatever output is produced so that the exact number of people who want to buy this product is equal to the exact amount that is being supplied or being sold. Okay, so remember, the price mechanism has a signaling and incentivizing function. We call these together the reallocation function, and then there's the rationing function, which is how prices are a way of rationing or distributing output among people so that a new equilibrium is reached. All right, price elasticity of supply. It's easier to wrap your head around price elasticity of demand and income elasticity of demand. But price elasticity of supply is a little bit more abstract because many, we as high school economics IB students aren't really producers, right? Many students in their essays, they say, hey, this product is a necessity, therefore it has a low price elasticity of supply. That is incorrect. Necessity is a determinant of PED, but not PES. Many students confuse the determinants of PED with PES. So primary commodities, for example, yes, they tend to be necessities, and therefore they tend to have a low PED. That's what determines PED. They also tend to have a low PES, but not because they're necessities, for other reasons. They tend to have a low PES because it takes time to produce or grow or extract them, right? Remember, primary commodities are those commodities that are grown or extracted from the earth. So yes, they have a low PES, but it's not because they're necessities and have few substitutes. Remember, they have few substitutes. These are the determinants of PED, number of substitutes and necessities or luxuries. But they take time to produce, grow, and extract. It's not easy to immediately increase production output. That's why they have, so remember, necessity is not a determinant of PES, price elasticity of supply. It's a determinant of PED. All right, tax incidence. This isn't as sort of explicit in the new syllabus, but it's something that basically, if you understand, it will do you a lot of good when you talk about taxes and when you evaluate. Remember, the more elastic your demand or supply is, the more you can pass the burden of the tax. So in this diagram, you see that the consumers have very inelastic demand, while the supply is rather more elastic than the demand. And as a result, the consumers will bear the greater share of the tax burden, as you can see, right? So basically, because the producers, their supply is more elastic, and the consumers have rather inelastic demand, producers can afford to pass on most of the tax burden to the consumers. Now, if this was flipped, if the demand curve was very elastic while the supply curve was very inelastic, it'll be the opposite. The producer tax burden will be bigger than the consumer tax burden. All right, market failure. Many students hate the externalities diagrams, and I understand why. When I studied econ for the first time, and even at the beginning of my teaching career as an economics teacher, back when the dinosaurs ruled the earth, that was a very long time ago, I hated these diagrams. So the first question to ask is, number one, is this externality on the production side or on the consumption side? Okay, now, once you've determined that it's on the production side, is this externality causing a problem of overproduction or a problem of underproduction, which are opposite problems? If the externality is on the consumption side, is this externality causing a problem of overconsumption or a problem of underconsumption? All right, is the externality positive or negative? Remember, if it's on the production, let me change colors. If it's on the production side and it's causing overproduction, then it's a negative externality of production. If it's on the consumption side and it's causing overconsumption, then it's a negative externality of consumption. If it's on the production side, but it's causing underproduction, then there's a positive externality of production. If it's on the consumption side and it's causing or represented as underconsumption, then there's a positive externality of consumption. So cigarettes, for example, are they overproduced or overconsumed or both? Which diagram do I draw? Cigarettes are demerit goods, okay? You should not draw an overproduction diagram. You should draw an overconsumption diagram, a negative externality of consumption diagram. So here are the 4 diagrams, okay? Here are the 4 diagrams. You've got here a negative production externality, and what that leads to is that the quantity provided by the market, QM, is greater than QOpt. There's a problem of overproduction. There's a problem of overproduction. Now, where is the welfare loss? The welfare loss must always point to the allocatively efficient market outcome. So here is the welfare loss. It's this triangle. It's not this triangle at the bottom. It has to point towards QOpt. Okay. What about a negative consumption externality? Again, QM is greater than QOpt, like a negative production externality. But here, there is a problem of overconsumption. Okay, you have a problem of overconsumption. All right. Where is the welfare loss? Remember, it must always point towards QOpt. It is this triangle here. You'll notice both of these diagrams, the welfare loss is pointing in the same direction because these are both negative externalities. All right, what about positive externalities? A positive production externality. Okay, QM, the quantity provided by the market, will be less than QOpt. There's the opposite problem of overproduction. There's underproduction. And the welfare loss must always point towards QOpt, so it's actually facing the opposite direction. If you compare this to the diagram at the top, this is a negative production externality, while down here is a negative, positive production externality, and the welfare loss triangles are pointing in opposite directions. All right, let's have a look here. A positive consumption externality. Again, QM is less than QOpt. There's a problem of underconsumption. Okay, while here there was a problem of underproduction, underconsumption, and the welfare loss is the same triangle as the other positive production externality. It's pointing here. It's not, many students think it's this triangle down here. It's not, it has to point towards QOpt, okay, towards the allocatively efficient output. So just remember, negative externalities will have a welfare loss triangle pointing towards the y-axis, towards QOpt, okay? Because there is overproduction or overconsumption. Positive externalities will always have a welfare loss triangle pointing away from the y-axis. Why? Because there's underproduction or underconsumption, all right? Some other tricky concepts in market failure. Many students write public schools or public hospitals or public education, public healthcare. They describe them as public goods. No, not every good or service that has the word public in it is actually a public good. Public schools and public hospitals are actually private goods because they are excludable and rivalrous, right? Here in the United States, for example, you can't just go to any public school. You have to be living in the zip code, right? That's a way of excluding. And education is definitely rivalrous. One student in the classroom, that's less space for everybody else, right? Public schools and public hospitals are actually merit goods that are produced by the public sector. So the word public here implies that they're produced by the public sector. It doesn't make them public goods. Remember, public goods, to be public goods, they have to be non-excludable and non-rivalrous, both. Like street lighting. Street lighting is a public good. It's a perfect example. It's non-excludable and non-rivalrous. Public schools and public hospitals are still excludable and still rivalrous. So they're actually merit goods, or you can actually call them private goods. So merit goods that are provided by the public sector. Okay, so the definition of public goods are goods and services that are non-excludable and non-rivalrous, and thus subject to the free rider problem. As a result, they are provided by the public sector. However, not all goods that are provided by the public sector are necessarily public goods. Public goods have to be non-excludable and non-rivalrous. Common access resources, okay? Oh, I made a mistake here. Wow, I'm so sorry. Common access resources are rivalless. So they're non-excludable, but rivalless, okay? So unlike public goods are non-excludable and non-rivalless. Common access resources are also non-excludable, like public goods, but they are rivalless. One person's consumption leaves less to everybody else. I'm so sorry about this error. See, we IB economics teachers, even after 15 or 16 years of teaching, still make these mistakes. Diagrams drawn here can be tricky because the main problem is there's no pricing mechanism. There's no pricing mechanism for the resource. Don't try and draw a diagram for the common access or the common pool resource itself. Try to draw a diagram for the product that is overproduced, okay? So say, for example, if the common access resource is fish stock in the ocean, then maybe you can draw a diagram for tuna fish and the market for tuna fish, and you can draw an overproduction diagram, which is a negative externality of production. Okay, there is a problem of overproduction. And then the negative externality, the external cost here, is the overuse of the common pool resource. Make sense? So you can't really draw a diagram for a common pool resource itself, but you can draw a diagram for the product that is produced using this common pool resource, and the externality, the negative externality, is the overuse or the degradation or the depletion of the common pool resource that is associated. Okay. Also, think about solutions to the problem, or taxing, subsidizing the activity. So if you want to solve the degradation of fish stock in the ocean, the problem of overfishing, then you have to tax fish. So here what you would do is you would shift the MPC curve by a tax closer to the MSC. Okay, so this would be the MPC plus tax. And this basically reduces the amount of overproduction. Okay. I hope you found this useful. I'm surprised. I mean, I thought I advertised this well enough, and I thought it well in advance, and I thought people would join, but maybe it's the wrong time. I'm sorry that my camera isn't turned on. For some reason on my laptop today, it just decided to not make the camera work, but that's okay. You heard my beautiful voice. Once again, please consider joining the channel and becoming a member. There's a lot of exclusive content for members, and it's only $4.99 a month, which is basically the cost of a cup of coffee. I have practice questions from paper 2 and paper 3. I have practice essay questions and sample responses. And I have a lot of really cool things like examples for IA commentaries. And basically, I'm trying to create exclusive content to give you all an incentive to join. It's been great reviewing these tricky concepts from microeconomics with you, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much.